A while ago, when Ryland said what Ryland said on This Morning, I did a video saying that we have to stop jumping to saying that people are fascists and far right. I explained that we have to begin to understand where people are getting their information from in order to answer what they believe to be the truth. Yesterday's Unite the Kingdom march is a really good example. At this point, I feel obliged to point out that this video really does go on for a long time. So if I usually annoy you, I would scroll on now. But if I don't, I'd say, get yourself a cup of tea, cup of coffee, have a seat, and let's have a chat. People are no longer receiving their information from the mainstream media. They believe that they are getting true information from citizen journalists on the ground. The line of "you are the media now" sounds great. I mean, I'm the first one to say that the mainstream media has got some major questions to answer about how they deliver things, more of that in a bit. But the fact that you are the media now means that you can say whatever you think, and everybody else that consumes your algorithm ends up thinking the same as you, because there's no contrast, there's no other point of view being given. We'll come back to Elon and why he's turned into the biggest Bond villain ever in a bit. But let's just really explore the thing of Tommy insisted there were 1 million people at the march yesterday, maybe even as many as 3 million. And all the usual agitators repeated this lie, 3 million. I've had people arguing with me this morning on this app, telling me that it definitely was 3 million. They've done this, they've done that, they've worked it out, but absolutely it was more than 110,000, which is what the Met actually said were there. Now this is a rubbish map, but you'll get the gist of it. Because I live in London. I've seen huge protests in London. And I know that when a protest is so big, certain streets have to close in the centre. Now yesterday, because I don't trust the media either, I do think the media can lie over things like this. So I was checking on various apps yesterday to see what road closures there were in the city. But actually, there weren't as many road closures as 3 million people, or indeed 1 million people, would have needed. In fact, you could have gone around the West End yesterday really easily, and people were doing it. But these people are clever, because they know that the vast majority of people reading these posts don't understand the geography of London, or don't apply critical thinking. Let's face it, if there were 1 million, 3 million people there yesterday, where are all the posts of people really cross because they couldn't get to see the rally? They couldn't get close to the stage, or they couldn't see a screen. If there were 1 million people there yesterday, those screens would have had to have been put up in various places to facilitate everybody being part of the rally. There were no additional screens. Everybody that wanted to see the rally could see the rally from where they were. The screens were sufficient. Therefore, it wasn't suddenly 1 million people, let alone 3 million people turn up. It was 110,000 or maybe even 150,000, but definitely no more. But nobody applies critical thinking. They've seen that Tommy says it, and now the richest man in the world has agreed with Tommy. By today, some of the regular right-wing agitators are still trying to up the game about, there must have been more people there, but they've realised that they have to tone it down a little bit. If there were 1 million or 3 million people there, why have GB News decided that they now also have to lie like everybody thinks the mainstream media have lied? But if you're only getting your information from X, you only believe what you read. And X is powerful. X can rewrite history. Here's the barrister that you often see on GB News telling us that actually fascism came from the left because Hitler was the Socialist Nationalist Party. Even though that's 100% not true. Don't believe Grok. This is a quote from Hitler. And Elon Musk, who is one of the richest men in the world, so everybody believes that he just must know everything, has agreed with the barrister from GB News, even though it's a lie. But Elon Musk, whose algorithm sends more and more fascist posts to people that have started to like his stuff, was up on Tommy's big screen yesterday saying there is now a fight between left and right and you either have to kill or be killed. Like, this is fascism in action. But remember, they don't believe that because they now believe that the fascists were the left. But this is a perfect political storm because there's not a moderate right wing. The Tories are in disarray. Reform have taken loads of their voters, but Reform think the same as Elon Musk. We've got a left wing that is fragmenting as they can't get behind the current government because they're not left wing enough. So they're calling out fascists, but they're considered to be fascists themselves. Thank God for Ed Davey, who's literally saying what any sensible politician should be saying right now, is that actually all the moderate parties should be coming together to condemn what's going on. But they can't do that because if they did come together, they would be perceived to be a uni party, and the uni party is what everybody's fighting against. And we have a media that is over amplifying Reform and their extremist views. So people are normalising extremist language. So it's no wonder that people are saying, well, we're not far right, we're just right, because they are being bombarded day after day with an over amplification of Reform, with all the main channels over amplifying their voice, normalising the extremism. Social media apps that have gone completely bonkers, which need to be regulated, but nobody dares say that, because if you say that, you're going to be accused of not agreeing with free speech. And a left wing that are so fragmented and still licking their wounds over the fact that Corbyn didn't get to be Prime Minister. And as the icing on the cake, we now have a mainstream media not knowing how social media works, so therefore, by trying to talk about the nuance of actually the far right might have organised the march, but that doesn't mean that everybody on the march is far right, giving the extremists a lovely little post to say, look, we are now the mainstream. Look, if you've lasted this long, I don't know what the answer is. I sort of think the answer is everybody listening to each other, not falling into the polarisation of algorithms, but also understanding that this is a really big issue. And unless the government don't get on top of it, it's going to get worse. That's not a very optimistic Sunday sermon, is it? So let's end on something much more positive. Good will always win out, but it might always be a struggle to get there, as you were.